Welcome back to this next segment. I know lunch was a little short, but I think we're all excited to hear from not only our sponsors, but the pharmaceutical companies that are working on all these new and different technologies and new treatments for our organization. We simply titled this Pharma. We're going to hear from four of our sponsors. Number one will be Amolyt, and Soraya Alice will be speaking. She's an MD and Vice President of Clinical Development and Regulatory Affairs. And she's going to be presenting from Lyon, France. And then after her, we're going to be followed by Ascendis. And with Ascendis, we are represented by Amy Knopfler. She's the Global Advocacy Lead, and she is awesome. Also a Global Communications Lead. Amy Xu is an MD, Senior Medical Director in Clinical Development. And after Ascendis is going to be Calcilytix. And with Calcilytix, they got a little video, and then Jonathan Fox, MD, he's a PhD in FACC and Chief Medical Officer for Calcilytix. And then we're going to end it with Takeda, and Takeda is going to be represented by Cheryl Schwartz. She's the head of U.S. Rare Disease Business Unit, and Tom, I'm going to butcher it, Calcilytix, I think I butchered it. Anyways, he's the MD, and he's also head of U.S. Medical. There will be questions for these during these presentations, but they're going to be pretty short. So go ahead and, if you type your questions, please annotate who they are going to. So if it regards to Amolyt, put Amolyt and then the question. That way we know who to get these questions to. I talked with Amanda. She's been running the show for us the whole time. She's going to get us those questions by the end of today, and we'll get them over to our sponsors. Again, sit back and enjoy, and we welcome Soraya from Amolyt.
Thank you very much, Bob. So if we can have my first slide, please. Thank you so much. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with you today. Thank you so much to the organizer for giving me the opportunity to present today. So I'm Soraya Alice. I am head of clinical development and regulatory affairs, and I would like to, in the next 10 minutes, to introduce you to our company, and very importantly to our compound that we are developing for the treatment of hypoparathyroidism. Next slide, please. So Amolyt Pharma is a biotech company. We are located in France and in the US as well. We are developing therapeutic peptides for rare endocrine and metabolic diseases. And we have, at this point in our pipeline, two compounds. The first one that has entered clinical trials very recently. This is 3601, and this is the one we're gonna talk about today. A PTH analog for the treatment of hypoparathyroidism. We have also the second compound at the preclinical stage, 3404, that is more aiming to therapeutic indications with insulin resistance and diabetes. So next slide, please. So let's talk about 3601. 3601 is a peptide that has been designed by a team in the Massachusetts General Hospital. So the pictures of the two people that you see here are the leading investigators and researchers at MGH that are at the origin of this project. Tom Gardella, who is a research scientist, and Michael Manstadt, who is an endocrinologist. It's someone that you may know. So these two people have been involved in the PTH research and in terms of hormone, but also receptor for some time. And they have actually described two configurations of the PTH receptor. So this is something very important to understand, and this is something that you can see on the right of this slide. So you have a first configuration, which is R0, and the second one on the right, which is RG. And the peptide in question, so 3601, has been specifically designed to bind to the R0 receptor. It binds also to the RG, but more specifically to the R0. And this is something specific because other PTH analogs that you have heard about do not bind to this receptor. So what does it mean, binding to this receptor? It means that it induces activation, that is sustained activation of the receptor, and this leads to sustained elevation of serum calcium. So this is what we want to achieve. And why that? Because we would like to control serum calcium over the entire day, and importantly, symptoms as well over the entire day. So in addition to this characteristic, we also aim at increasing reabsorption of calcium by the kidney. So these are the two main characteristics that may be achieved with targeting this R0 receptor. Of course, the compound does bind as well to the RG configuration of the receptor. However, it has a short half-life, and because of that, the effect is limited, particularly the effect on bone, because you may know that when there is activation, when there is sustained and a longer exposure to the receptor of PTH, this may have some adverse events. So this is what we do not want to have, and this is why the compound has a short half-life. Next slide. So I would like to show you a couple of data that we have generated in animals. We have tested the compounds in normal animals, and these are example in the monkey, where you can see on the left, we have compared injection of the compound with the placebo, basically what we call vehicle here. And this is the orange line with the compound. You can see very clearly that there is an increase in serum calcium, and very importantly that this increase is sustained over time. You can see that after 24 hours, after 36 hours, and this is what we want to achieve in humans as well. On the right, what you can see is comparison with other PTH analogs, some of them that you may know, the long one, which is 184, this is the orange line, and also the shorter form, 134. So basically, and very clearly, this increase in serum calcium is greater than the one that is achieved with other PTH analog. Next slide, please.
Just letting you know, Soraya, you have about one or two more minutes left.
Okay.
2 more minutes.
Very quickly on the next slide, we have also got some results in animal models of hypoparathyroidism, basically normalizing serum calcium without increasing urinary calcium. And on the next slide, please. So I'm going to conclude. Actually, we have started clinical trials. This is what I mentioned. There is a press release that has been issued that you can see on the website on the website of the association. We are starting with healthy volunteers. Of course, this is the standard way, and we hope to get very quickly to patients. What we want to achieve in terms of therapeutic target, maintain the calcium within normal range during the entire day, reduce calcium and vitamin D supplementation, reduce also urinary calcium excretion. This is a very important target. And finally, maintain bone integrity. We think it is also a very important target in terms of safety. And I'm going to stop here.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Next slide. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attention. And please visit our booth for information on the company and on the compound. Thank you.
Amy, you're good to go.
Great. Hi, good day, everyone. My name is Amy Kneffler. I'm the Global Advocacy Lead for Ascendis Pharma, and it is I'm also joined today by Amy Xu, who is an endocrinologist and our Senior Medical Director in our Clinical Development Department. It is really our pleasure to be here today and be a part of this conference. I've had the honor of participating and being a part now in 3 consecutive hypopara conferences, and this is by far the best. We learn every single time from your questions and your experiences, and without a doubt, the quality of the presentations that the association puts together are really, really incredible. So thank you all for letting us join today. Next slide, please. Just a bit about Ascendis by way of introduction for those who we've not met or who haven't been familiar with the company before. Our mission is to develop best-in-class therapeutics that address unmet medical needs and to make a meaningful difference in patients' lives. We're doing that by leveraging what's at the core of our company, a very innovative novel technology that I think you've been hearing a bit more about over the past few years called the TransCon technology, and Amy will give you some more information about that in a little bit. We're focused on living our core values, which are patience, science, and passion. And of course, patients are at the fundamental core, again, of everything that we're doing to develop new medicines. Next slide. Some of you may or may not be aware, we are actually a Danish company. Our corporate headquarters is right outside of Copenhagen in Hellerup, Denmark. We also have a number of clinical and research sites throughout the world, 2 in Germany, as you can see here. And we also recently, in the past year, opened up our Redwood City research facility, which is focused on developing new therapeutics in the oncology space. Our US office is based in Palo Alto, and we have an affiliate through a strategic collaboration in China that is also working to bring, develop, and commercialize the products in our pipeline for endocrinology rare diseases. Next slide. Great. So before I turn it over to Amy, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge a wonderful project that we were able to work with earlier this year with all of you and with the association. We were very, very pleased and honored to support this development of the Voices of Hypopara survey, which was conducted by the association earlier this year, released at World Hypoparathyroidism Day, and subsequently published in the ASBMR medical conference just recently. Now, we all know that there have been many surveys over the years. We heard about a few from Bob and Deb. We've seen various publications. We heard Liz Glenister talk about some of the research that she's been involved in over the years. But it's a story that cannot be told enough, and it cannot be repeated enough until folks really understand and appreciate the important and complex experience that people living with hypoparathyroidism have. So again, we know that calcium is very difficult to control, and you all have many challenges with that, as well as difficult experiences such as the ones that we've heard about this morning from Dr. Ruan and interfacing with the medical community. So we were particularly pleased that this survey, which I had the honor to co-author with Deb, Bob, Lynette, and Danette Astolfi, we were able to have that published at the ASBMR conference. So I just want to thank all of you for participating, for partnering with us in this project, and for our continued work to get the word out about the need for better understanding and awareness of hypopara. And please do visit our exhibit which has a little more information about the survey, and you can also get a copy of that poster from Bob and Deb if needed. Next slide, please. Great, so this is where I'd like to turn the presentation over to Dr. Xu to tell you a little bit more about our TransCon platform and our research programs.
Thank you, Amy. So this slide shows you why we are called TransCon PTH. It stands for Transient Conjugation, which is a really neat, powerful, and flexible platform. And it's a little bit of a mix and match strategy. As you see here, in the first row, we've got all different kinds of linkers at our disposal to choose the right half-life, to choose the right drug, customized for the drug that you want to give, customized for the linker, the carrier that you want to use. So those are the linkers. In the middle row, what you see are the different kinds of carriers, just as examples that we can use. On the left side, you see soluble carriers, and then you see on the right side insoluble carriers, such as hydrogels. So however we'd like to get the medications or hormones, in this case, around the body, we can accomplish that. In this case, with TransCon PTH, we want it to get everywhere in the body that PTH gets, so we use the soluble carrier. That is, it dissolves in the blood and circulates along with the blood. And finally, on the bottom row, you see the different kinds of drugs we can add to this construct. Antibodies, proteins, peptides, and small molecules. And that little orange helix there is our representation of parathyroid hormone. Next slide, please. This pipeline slide shows you the investigational compounds we are looking at in clinical trials or developing at this time. The blue lines represent things in our endocrinology rare disease space, whereas the green lines represent our efforts in the oncology realm. So I will focus on the endocrinology because that's where I work. We have a growth hormone compound you see there, and it's the first one we started working on. It's progressing along quite nicely. We submitted a marketing application to FDA and also in Europe recently. And the PTH one, the one that you will all be most interested in, is also moving along. We have reported out phase 2 results. I'll be discussing a few of those with you on the last slide, and we are gearing up for phase 3. We also have TransCon C naturopeptide, which is an investigational treatment for achondroplasia, the most common cause of dwarfism. Next slide, please. This shows you more detail about the technology behind TransCon PTH. On the left side, you see what we call the prodrug, the circulating drug that is injected into patients once a day. So you see there is the PTH, parathyroid hormone, 1 to 34, that's the orange peptide there, the green linker, and then the blue carrier, which is flexible. And when injected into the body, this prodrug releases parathyroid hormone 1 to 34. Those are the first 34 amino acids of PTH 1 to 84, which is what the body makes. PTH 1 to 34, I will note, is the business end of the parathyroid hormone molecule. So it's been known for a long time that the 1 to 34, the first 34 amino acids, are what accomplishes the downstream actions of parathyroid hormone in the body and at the level of the receptors. And it is actually a fragment that is sometimes made biologically as well, too, as parathyroid hormone is metabolized in the body. So that is what we have in our prodrug construct, and that is what is released and available to meet the parathyroid hormone receptors, as you see in the top right-hand corner of the screen. And then the linker and carrier construct is inert, doesn't react with anything in the body, and is cleared presumably through renal clearance. And this design, I will let you know, we chose it specifically to release parathyroid hormone in the body within physiologic range for the entire day. Our best attempt to mimic what happens in the normal body. And so indeed, as you'll see on the next slide, this is what we were able to accomplish in our phase 1 trial of human subjects. Sorry, next slide, please. Okay, so This is when we took the drug to healthy volunteers, the first time we ever used TransCon PTH in humans. What you see here is above that blue dotted line would be what we would consider the physiologic range for PTH 1 to 34. And those 4 colored lines are the PTH levels achieved by the 4 different doses that were tested. What you can see there is indeed we are getting exposure to PTH for the whole day and within the physiologic range. Note that the physiologic range is different because we're taking into account that it's PTH 1 to 34 rather than 1 to 84. And this is how we think PTH in the physiologic range all the time will be best for kidneys, for symptoms, and for bone health as well. And that's what we're looking at in the clinical trials in patients with hypoparathyroidism. So next slide, please, and I'm almost getting there. This is the last slide. Because I know you'll give me a time check, Amanda.
Yes,
So,
1 more minute.
Yes, here we go. So here's what I can tell you. As you know, and we're so glad for everyone's enthusiasm, I am governed by the rules of FDA, so I have to be very careful how I disclose things to you in a careful way, in an accurate way, and not to speculate. So here's what I can tell you. We've had positive data from our ongoing phase 2 Path Forward trial in adults with chronic hypoparathyroidism, and this data has shown that more than 80% of people were able to come off of their calcitriol, alpha calcidiol, or calcium at weeks 4, and they continue to be off of those at week 26. It demonstrated a significant effect on quality of life as measured by the short form 36 health survey, and that was compared to placebo and also over time. And to our knowledge, that's the first time in the hypoparathyroidism that it has been demonstrated against placebo, right, that a treatment has been able to improve quality of life. It was very safe. There were no treatment-related serious or severe adverse events, and nothing led to discontinuation of the study drug. 59 subjects started the trial, and 58 continue to this day. We're beyond the 6-month mark, and we are really gearing up and getting ready for phase 3. Details will be coming soon. So in closing, I'd like to thank the Hypoparathyroid Association very much for being here and for including us here. Long before I was developing drugs at Ascendis Pharma, I was a practicing academic endocrinologist, taking care of people like you. And this was always the first place after diagnosis that I referred patients to for a community and for good information. So thank you.
Jocelyn, you're good to go.
Thank you, Amanda. Hello, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Ashford, and I am the head of patient advocacy at Calcilytix. In an earlier presentation today, you may have heard Dr. Rachel Gaffney talk about a phase 2 clinical trial studying the investigational drug encaleret in individuals diagnosed with autosomal dominant hypocalcemia type 1 or ADH1. Well, that is the trial sponsored by Calcilytix, so you've actually probably heard of us already. We are so incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you today, grateful to the Hypoparathyroidism Association for bringing you all together so that we can learn from you. We have a presentation for you, a very short presentation from our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jonathan Fox, who was unable to join us live. However, he did record a brief backgrounder on Calcilytix, as well as provide an overview of our clinical development program. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan. It's a voice, by the way.
Can you guys hear that out of curiosity? Awesome. 1 second. Okay,
Conference.
now we're good.
My name is Jonathan Fox, and I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Calcilytix, a BridgeBio company investigating encaleret for the treatment of hypoparathyroidism. First, my disclosures. The information included here is not meant for use in any other setting and is intended to serve as talking points for discussion at this Hypoparathyroidism Association virtual meeting. Encaleret is an investigational drug. The safety and efficacy of encaleret have not been established. There is no guarantee that encaleret will receive health authority approval or become commercially available in any country in which it is being investigated. Calcilytix Therapeutics is an affiliate of BridgeBio Pharma. BridgeBio was founded in 2015 and is made up of a portfolio of more than 20 molecule-specific companies or affiliates. BridgeBio provides select centralized functions and shared resources, while each of the affiliates maintains decentralized management of their project and their asset. The focus of BridgeBio overall is on rare genetic diseases or Mendelian disorders and genetically driven cancers, targeting diseases at their source. Calcilytix was founded in 2018 based on work from the preceding decades investigating calcilytic therapies for osteoporosis. The mission of the company is to treat disorders of calcium homeostasis, including hypoparathyroidism and autosomal dominant hypocalcemia type 1. We're investigating encaleret, a small molecule antagonist of the calcium sensing receptor, or CASR, which functions to regulate serum calcium levels. Our approach is to actively seek the perspectives of physicians, patients, their families, and their advocates in the drug development process, hence our participation in today's conference. Blood calcium is regulated through the activity of the calcium sensing receptor, which is present in the parathyroid hormone secreting cells of the parathyroid gland, as well as in the bone and in the kidney and other tissues of the body. Calcium sensing receptor regulates the parathyroid gland's activity, which is responsible for the release of parathyroid hormone. And that PTH in turn promotes calcium release into the blood by osteoclasts and also promotes calcium reabsorption from the filtered urine of the kidney. And it also makes for active vitamin D formation in the kidney as well. So the target organs are pictured in purple at the bottom half of the slide. When PTH is secreted in response to calcium sensing receptor signals, calcium is mobilized from bone mineral into the bloodstream. Its effects on the kidney are to promote the recovery of calcium from filtered urine back into the bloodstream, and the vitamin D produced by the kidney also in response to PTH acts at the level of the intestine to increase dietary absorption of calcium. So the calcium sensing receptor functions as a calciostat. In other words, by reading the concentration of calcium in the blood and in the fluids surrounding the organs in which it is expressed, calcium sensing receptor tells the parathyroid gland whether the calcium is too low, is just right, or is too high. By sensing blood calcium level, it acts primarily at the level of the parathyroid gland, but also at the level of the kidney to maintain body's calcium balance. In other words, the concentration of calcium within rather narrow limits. The calcium sensing receptor can thus trigger PTH release and shifts in either calcium retention and reabsorption or elimination between the blood and other body compartments. In the disease autosomal dominant hypocalcemia type 1 or ADH1, a dysfunctional calcium sensing receptor senses normal blood calcium levels as high and thus turns things down, leading to decreased production of parathyroid hormone and its end organ effects that I've just described, leading to chronically low blood calcium levels. So thus, the design of the encaleret development program for ADH1 is informed by the human biology of the disease. It's an investigational drug and that it's orally available as a pill form. And it's designed to antagonize the abnormal calcium sensing receptor response in ADH1, allowing a reset of that calciostat and normalization of blood calcium levels in people so affected. The dose of encaleret may need individual adjustment corresponding to that person's blood calcium balance. Here's our estimated timeline for the clinical development of encaleret for ADH1. We're currently involved in a phase 2 study at the NIH that should complete sometime in 2021 with a phase 3 study to be planned for confirmatory data on both efficacy and safety. If you'd like additional information on the program, there's a website listed on the left side of the bottom of the slide, as well as you can email us at medinfo@calcilytix.com. As I mentioned, the phase 2 trial is a single site at the NIH to evaluate the safety, tolerability, and efficacy in ADH1. We're planning to study up to 16 participants with ADH1 with single escalating doses in the first period at the NIH Clinical Center over a period of 5 days. And then those same people will be invited back to spend another 5 days at the clinical center to be dosed with multiple escalating doses to try and then narrow down what is the appropriate dose for that individual, followed by an outpatient period of up to 6 months with extended dose maintenance to both evaluate long-term efficacy and safety in these individual participants. So the outcome measures and objectives of the study are primarily safety and tolerability, but with the efficacy rate readouts of blood calcium, urine calcium, and a variety of other biomarkers that are listed in the next row. We anticipate being able to achieve top-line proof of concept results of this study in 2021. And for more detailed trial information, please visit clinicaltrials.gov and type in either the name Encalaret, Calcilytix, or the NCT number NCT 04581629. As part of our program, we're also planning to make available to individuals who requested sponsored genetic hypoparathyroidism testing to look for people who may be carriers of some of these genetic variants that may contribute to disease. So we're partnering with Inviti, which is a genetic testing company here in the Bay Area of San Francisco, where we are located, to provide physicians in the United States with access to no-cost tests for patients diagnosed with non-surgical hypoparathyroidism and increase our understanding of the impact of human genetics on this disease. We expect to launch this program late in November of this current year. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and we look forward to interacting with you during this virtual conference, and we look forward to providing you with further data from our program next year. Thanks very much. Good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Depending on.
You're all good to go, Cheryl.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Cheryl Schwartz, and I'm the head of Takeda's U.S. Rare Disease Business. I'm here today to talk to you about Natpara, and I am joined by my colleague, Tom Koutsavalis, who is Takeda's U.S. Head of Medical Affairs. And I know there are some questions regarding the SUP program. Tom will be answering those today as well. I want to start by, first of all, thanking Bob and Deb Murphy and the entire Hypoparathyroidism Association board and everyone who's worked on transforming this meeting from a live one to a virtual conference, which is obviously no small task and so critical for patients who are suffering from hypoparathyroidism. So thank you so much for doing that and for having us here today. When we were here at last year's meeting, none of us could have imagined, what lay ahead in 2020, and that here we would be in the middle of a global COVID pandemic. We know that this has led to unprecedented challenges for the community, and we sincerely regret that the recall of Natpara for some of you has made those challenges even more challenging and difficult. And looking back, I also don't think that any of us would have imagined that here we would be a year later without a solution in place for Natpara. I know Tom and I had certainly hoped that we would be here today with a formal solution to share with you all and more information on when Natpara would be returning. But as we talked about in the past, and as I know you all are aware of, drug and device development is incredibly complex, and the issues that we're grappling with here have been especially challenging. Over the last year, we've been working continuously to address the concerns that were raised during the recall, specifically We've been conducting extensive testing, we've been generating data, and we've been assessing those results. Sometimes that testing process then leads to new data that then has to be tested and analyzed, and all of that has to be discussed with the FDA, and those regulatory timelines for sharing that information. You know, this takes significant amount of time. And, you know, that's certainly something that's frustrating to us, so I can only imagine how difficult and frustrating that is for all of you to hear about it. But, you know, we do take some comfort in knowing that, you know, this is the rigorous process that we need to go through in order to safely return Natpara to all of you, you know, in collaboration with FDA as well. So, you know, what we wanted to kind of give you an update on today is, you know, the encouraging news is that, you know, at this point, we believe that we've identified a viable path forward. The next step is for us to present all of this data and information that we've been generating to FDA and discuss our approach with them in more detail. You know, pending their review of this information, what we're hoping is that we'll be able to come back to you with a more definitive timeline sometime early next year. You know, by the end of March is sort of our timing. It could be a little bit earlier than that. I think it's important to note, though, what that means is not that, you know, at that time period when we come back to you next that you'll, you know, have Natpara back in your hands if you were previously taking it, but that will have a more definitive timeline based on those discussions with FDA. So while we are certainly not anywhere, you know, where we had hoped that we would be by this point in time, and we're not as far along as we know is important for all of you as patients who depend on these medications, we have made really important progress. And our commitment to you is as strong as it was, you know, when we last spoke, and as, you know, as strong as it has been as we've been working through this issue, you know, on a day-to-day basis. And really, you know, I just want to reassure you all that there is not a day that goes by that the team is not working on this, an extensive team of people, and that we don't discuss it in depth in terms of the implications for the patient community as well. So that's sort of, you know, what we want to share with you about kind of timing for bringing, you know, the 14-day Natpara product back. You know, we hope to be able to come back to you relatively soon with more information on that. But I would like to turn it over to my colleague Tom, who's going to talk a little bit more about the Natpara Special Use Program, which was put in place with regulatory oversight, as you all know, as part of a program to provide Natpara to patients who were previously prescribed Natpara, who were at extreme life-threatening risk of complications that were associated with the acute effects of recall-related discontinuation. So for those of you who are on the Natpara SUP program, Special Use Program, Tom can provide you with a bit more of an update. I know there was some discussion about this on, you know, when the meeting kicked off, and Bob did mention it. I know the Hypoparathyroidism Association has shared some information with you about that. So I'll turn it over to Tom to give you a little bit more of an update.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. And before we jump into the details, I did want to echo Cheryl's point. Certainly a big thank you to the Hypopara Association board for helping us organize and maintain our commitment to connecting with all of you. Certainly, unfortunate that we can't be there in person with the pandemic that's ongoing, and certainly enjoyed meeting everybody last year when we were in Denver, and hopefully we'll have live meetings coming up again soon. And also to echo a big thank you and really a connection to all of you, all of the patients and all of your family members, and all of the support that you've needed across what has been a very challenging time. Certainly we've been working, as Cheryl mentioned, night and day to get to a solution, and so we'll continue to do that. Our commitment remains absolutely stronger than it has ever been, and rest assured the team behind us as well has been on top of this on a daily basis. So I just wanted to start with that, and I'll give you a few points of overview on the Special Use Program itself. So as many of you probably already know, we developed the Special Use Program with FDA oversight at the time of the US recall back in September of last year. Since then, many healthcare providers have actually applied to the single-use Natpara program. For those who don't know it, it's a 1-dose per cartridge program. It's available completely free of charge for extraordinary cases where patients who were previously on Natpara have been at extreme risk of life-threatening complications because of the acute discontinuation of Natpara due to the recall. Today, we've got a large number of patients who are on the program. That many of them have come on the program very early on when their healthcare providers reached out to us as soon as the recall began, and they continue to receive that their Natpara through that program today. Our hope was, of course, that it would be a short-term program, that it would be something that would bridge us until we get to Natpara 14-day being back on the market. But unfortunately, as Cheryl has mentioned, it has taken a lot longer than any of us could have expected. And granted, we're still continuing very actively in the process and hope that we have more information soon. The one challenge that we always have with the program itself, of course, is that we're actually, every time a patient takes a 1 month supply of the special use, single use Natpara, that's the equivalent of almost a whole year's supply of product before the recall. And so we have to keep a very close eye on making certain we have enough supply and manufacturing to be able to provide enough product, obviously, for what is a high use volume, much more than obviously we would have ever had before. And so that's important for us to make certain we're very cautious as we go through that to have supply available for all. Now, as you know, in biologics and pharmaceutical manufacturing, it's a complex process, so it's not unusual that we may see supply interruptions and disruptions. The process itself is not as straightforward. It requires a lot of nuance and technique, and we obviously, as you can imagine, we maintain an extremely high level of quality when we work on our manufacturing of biologics. And so it's not unusual to have supply ups and downs as we go through that process. And so very important that we keep a close eye, especially in this case where the demand for the product, because we're using basically a whole year's worth of product within a month for each patient, very critical that we keep a close eye on that. So that brings me to some of the information that we shared earlier this week about the special use program. For those of you who may not be aware, so this past week we notified patients enrolled on the SUP and their prescribing physicians that there's a potential for a near-term supply interruption of the Natpara 100 microgram dose as early as November 21st of this year, so in a couple of weeks. So we notified that just to make certain that folks understood that is a possibility. The supply interruption would not impact patients outside the US, so it's only a US supply interruption. And it's due to an unexpected manufacturing disruption. I mentioned to you, obviously, as we manufacture biologics, that it's not uncommon that we see variability, and we do quality checks on a very regular basis, and we remanufacture and do that type of work. So not unusual to see that. It is entirely separate from the rubber particulate issue from that rubber septum that led to the US recall last year. So this is an entirely separate issue from the rubber septum concerns that we had. So we're working very urgently to maintain a supply continuity throughout this process for all impacted patients. And we're going to be able to provide another update. So we have a lot of moving parts as we speak, and manufacturing ongoing again as well. So we're going to know more by November 16th. So on November 16th, we're going to reach out to you again to let you know where things stand with 100 microgram. So keep that in mind. The reason we're addressing it earlier and sooner, even though we're not certain that there will be the interruption, but there's the potential for it, is we absolutely wanted to make certain that patients were able to reach out to their healthcare practitioners and appropriately assess and adjust as need be in case that supply interruption comes into play. So again, hoping to get back we will be getting back by November 16th to let you know where everything stands. We do not expect. Yes.
Sorry, just that you know you have 1 minute left.
Thank you very much. So we do not expect any other doses to be impacted at this time, but as you can imagine, we're very closely monitoring the 25, 50, and 75 microgram doses as well. And we'll also make certain that by November 16th, we'll update you on where those doses stand in terms of supply as well. We're also extremely grateful to the HA board for setting up a time for us to answer questions about the anticipated supply interruption of the 100 next Thursday, October 29th at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time for those patients enrolled in the special use program. So we'll make certain to have the association, actually we'll plan to post the date and time of that session and how to connect into that session. So we'll have an opportunity to reach out again and speak to all of you specifically that are on the SUP. So if you don't mind, Amanda, if we can hand it back to Cheryl just for a moment and then be able to wind down.
No problem. Cheryl, you're good to go.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Tom and I really want to thank you all for your patience as we continue to work through these issues and coming closer to getting Natpara back to the broader community. As Tom mentioned, both he and I will be with those members of the SUP who have additional questions on Thursday. We'll be joined by some of our other colleagues from our patient services organization. So if you have immediate questions, please reach out to your patient services representative, and we'll have time on Thursday to address additional questions as well. We absolutely recognize the importance of the medical need that Natpara addresses for many of you. You have our commitment to continue moving forward, to do whatever we can to bring this product back to those patients who need it. So thank you again for allowing us to come and speak with you today. And thank you to the Hypoparathyroidism Association for everything you do every day. We really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you all, and want to wish you all a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Bob, is there anything else you want to mention, or are we good to go?
No, I just wanted to thank all of our sponsors and for all the work that they do and their continued support for our community as well. I mean, we couldn't do what we do or able to do without their support and without their help. We love how open and transparent they are and willing to just talk. And the representatives that we work with every day, with Amy with Ascendis, and Elizabeth with Takeda, and Jocelyn with Calcilytix, and Soraya, you guys are absolutely awesome and just a joy to work with. So we thank you for what you're able to share with us today, and love to do this again, make this a permanent fixture in our conferences. But I think with this rush thing, I think we'll look at giving you guys double the amount of time next time, just to give you a little more time. But thank you again.
Thank you.